Welcome to Blog Talk Radio. This is Studio 1776, and I'm your host, Daniel Leach. I am joined by Eric Hughes, and just want to thank you for joining us today on Studio 1776. Hello, Eric, are you there?
I'm here, Daniel. Am I coming through okay?
Yes, you are. Sound great. It looks like we have another caller from 775-315. Let me take that call, see who that is, okay, Eric? Hold on one second. Hello, caller. Seven 775. Hello, caller from 77. Yeah, hey, how are you?
I'm pretty good. Starting a little bit late, but I think I'm on the air for me to just come on and comment if you guys want me to.
Sure. No problem. Great. Welcome to the program. Well, tonight we're going to be doing an update on the Bennett benefit and talking about a massive state police roadblock that happened in Western New York. We're going to be talking about government and corporate infiltrators as well. Eric called me today and told me a little bit about this, and I'm going to let Eric give an update on what happened. I know it was an interesting story. It was somebody that he knew personally today this happened to. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, Daniel, first of all, an update on the Shane Bennett case for people who are unfamiliar with it. It was a massive gun seizure. It took place 2 days before Thanksgiving. Very violent. 3 in the morning. The guy sleeping in bed with his wife. 2 teenage sons in the house. There was no criminal act committed. He's being charged with having guns that were lawfully owned by him that were all of a sudden made illegal by the New York State Safe Act. So in other words, he had his gun collection, the guns are lawfully owned. All of a sudden the Safe Act gets passed and says that because he decided to, 11 years ago, because Shane Bennett decided to drive somebody to a drug house instead of a drug store, make the case the worst poison's at the drug store rather than the drug house. Anyway, it led to a felony arrest, so now he's being disarmed very violently at 3 in the morning, 2 days before Thanksgiving, by the New York State Police SORT unit. There's a new one for you folks. They're not calling it the SWAT team anymore. They're calling it the SORT unit, S-O-R-T. What that unit does is take troopers from all around the state that are from distant places from where the raid is taking place. So we're here in Ontario County, middle of the north central part of western New York State, underneath Lake Ontario, or just to the south of it. Maybe underneath soon if Cot's coming. But we know they'll take troopers from Albany and Utica and Syracuse and Buffalo, places that are an hour, 2, 3 hours away. How anybody can be morally retarded enough to go 2 hours from their home and think that they're some strange foreign planet and they're going to murder those people and steal their property and kick their doors in with their faces covered with ski masks, green military fatigues, they held a loaded weapon to his teenage son's head while he's sitting there shivering on the couch. They tried to shoot the dog. Shane's there covering the dog, saying, "No, don't shoot the dog." The dog's cowering in the corner, wasn't even barking. "We're going to shoot the dog. We're going to shoot the dog. Get out of the way." So they wanted to shoot the dog. They wanted to steal his gun. They took $10,000 in cash from the safe because Shane doesn't use banks. Smart guy. And only claimed 4,000 of the 10,000 into the evidence log, leaving $6,000 stolen by the New York State Police SORT unit. And the sheriff's deputies obviously knew this raid was going to take place. It's still up in the air. I've got conflicting reports as to whether there were sheriffs on the unit. Doesn't much matter. Where was the sheriff, deputies, and the high sheriff to protect Shane as a chief peace officer in a county or subdivision, according to legaldictionary.com, is the sheriff. Not that it doesn't say except if the state comes in and claims jurisdiction, or except if the three-letter alphabet agency from Washington comes in, then they're gone. Oh, what about Interpol? How about a Sheshwan? Maybe if the pimp in Rome shows up, maybe we can just kiss his boots too. So there's the highest peace officer. We don't have law enforcement in the United States. Hello, Fox News. Everybody else, including the alternative media InfoWars. If I hear the word law enforcement again, I'm going to throw up. There's not supposed to be any law enforcement in a free republic. Peace officers, hello. So, well, they don't want that, of course, because they don't make money doing peace officering. They make money enforcing corporate contracts on free people. And it is contract law that's being taught at the New York State Police Academy. I have that from inside sources. Almost all of their classroom training is contract law. So they're looking at you as, hey, you signed that piece of paper that said you're going to take a license. You better have read that fine print that says they own your ass, excuse my language, once you sign on the dotted line to have a license. You're almost better off just driving with no license and take it to court when it comes. A lot of states are passing laws that now they take you right to jail if you don't have a license. They don't just write you a ticket. They really make it hard. So people don't want to fight it. They just want to get the license and make the Nazis go away. And how is it not Nazism when you have militarized enforcement units cruising the streets, literally people hunting? Literally. They hunt people. They're looking for this. Who's got this expired sticker? So anyway, leads us to Sunday morning, of all times, Sunday morning during church. While I was at church, finally found a good church, not a 501c3 corporate whore, a really good church, small, old school. And during that time, I come to find out later in the day that right up the road on Route 96 in Ontario County, the town of Manchester, New York State Police set up a roadblock. I believe there were reports of 8 troopers, cars, and at least a half a dozen cars pulled off the side of the road. They towed over 20 cars away, and they had a 75-year-old woman that could barely walk in the back of the trooper car. Apparently she had, not inspected her car or, failed to re-register, renew something. All this crap about renew every 5 years, renew every 5 months, renew every year. So the government, the do-nothing government sluts can get more of your money. So everything's renewed now. You should get a license. That's good for life. I believe in Arizona they still do that. But, here you've got to renew everything every year because a bunch of government prostitutes need your money, folks. So I hope you're just willing to give it to them. So anyway, the troopers are stopping everybody, going in both directions. Now, asking, and this is unique, they usually, most of the time, the state police hide on this guy, inspection inspectors, safety, they do the DWI thing on a New Year's Eve. They were just literally stopping everybody and saying, show me your papers. And their words they were using was, show me your license and proof of registration. Now, my friend pulled up and he was on his way to church. It was going to be his first time at the church that I go to. What a great way to bring new people into to a church in Ontario County, New York. Isn't that good for business? A guy wants to come to a new church out in the country and runs into literally Nazi Germany. And we're talking 9:30, 10 a.m. on Sunday in the morning. And so he pulls up to the roadblock. He's in his mom's car, brand new car, really nice one. Brand new stickers, both the inspection sticker and the registration sticker, which were on the window and clearly reveal all the details of the car. Way too many, all up to date, brand new. Nothing wrong, nothing going down. He wasn't drinking, smoking. There was no cause. They said, show your license and proof of registration. He goes, opens the glove box. Of course, Mom had forgot to put the little card in the glove box that also says, yeah, the card's registered. The sticker on the windshield isn't enough. You have to have a matching card in the glove box that you can hand to them. Because they can steal that from you. So he said everything's in order. And he looked in the back seat. What's wrapped up in that piece of paper? He had a couple of steaks that he had taken off the deer that he got this year. Now, these are ready to go in the oven, everything except the peppers and onions on top, okay? And they tell him, we're going to take your venison because it's illegal for you to drive around with those steaks. Now, they're off the deer. These steaks are already cut. They're ready to cook. He could have said, I got them up at the grocery store. He was honest with them, dummy, and said, yeah, it's my venison. It's, taking it to my buddy Eric down at church. Oh, that venison's illegal. Your hunting tag needs to be attached to the steak. Like what? Right up until the point it goes in the freaking oven? So he said, absolutely, and they threatened to tow his car. He said, absolutely not. You're not towing my car. You're not taking my steak. We're going to be in court for a long time over this. Of course, they let him go. Because the people who stand up, they are usually the victims of the government will laugh. So the lions don't go after the big cheese, the big bull elephant. They don't go after the big bull water buffalo like you've seen in the video. They go after the baby. They go after the little one, the old, the elderly, the crippled, just like Hitler did. He started with the retarded people and the handicapped, because nobody would be outraged. Those people need help. Well, maybe the government's good. Their government's good for them. And then they came for the gypsies. And then they came for the communists. And nobody stood up. And then they came for the trade unionists. I wasn't one of them, so I didn't stand up. Then they came for the Jews. I wasn't a Jew, so I didn't stand up. Then they came for me, and guess what? There was no one left to stand up. And that's a famous quote from Pastor Marvin Niemöller, pre-World War II Germany. He might have been up in the Netherlands. I forget, but that's the famous quote. First they came for the gypsies, then the communists, then the Jews. I didn't stand up, and then they came for me, and guess what? There's nobody around. You're on your own, bro. How's that going to feel now? So this is why court of observers is so important. This is why, as Dave will tell you, having a militia is extremely important. Not that you have to go out and do anything with your militia yet, but it's good to have that network of people like court of observers. Start out getting to know everybody at the courthouse. Go to a shooting club. Do physical training on the weekend with people, even if it's just basketball or tennis. Start preparing yourself, because it's only going to get worse if we don't do anything. So there's a combination of self-preparedness, which Dave can talk about, and political awareness and activism, out of my end. We're trying to make a dent in this beast, in this anti-Christ system. And to do it on Sunday is an overt sign of ungodly behavior. New York State Police knew exactly what they were doing. They all come from Bennett on Route 332 in Canandaigua. They're all a bunch of Nazi pigs. There's no question about it. Every single one of them was there willingly and eagerly. Don't give me this crap. They're the good guys, just ordered to do it. I could order Dave to go jump off a bridge right now. Was he going to be stupid enough to do it? Say, I was just taking orders, and I'm just doing my job. I'm a good guy, and don't blame me. What do you mean? You're the idiot who did it. You're the executioner. The executioner is to blame, not the order giver. The order giver is just flapping their lips like I am right now. Paper in the wind. Your piece of paper, it comes from Albany legislature that says New Yorkers must do this now, or this crap comes out of Washington that says we can tell everybody to do that now. That is nothing unless you have a fleet of executioners in the state police, sheriff's department, three-letter agencies, blah, blah, blah. So they were it was disgusting. And it had to have an old woman who could barely walk in the back of the trooper car like she was a perp, because she didn't have her papers in order. It's really disgusting and very interesting. This roadblock took place right around the corner, walking distance from the American Legion that's got enough guts to host the Bennett benefit, for the family that had the gun and the cash stolen by the police, a benefit for them to say, I know, the reason we're really having the benefit is to get the money back for the kids. The envelopes in the safe during the raid 2 days before last Thanksgiving were clearly marked. Some of the money, a good chunk of it, we're talking hundreds of dollars, were marked boys' wages, the boy's name, and then wages his neighbor's farm over the summer. Hey, put yourself on mute, Dave, for Daniel. So we got a lot of background noise coming through.
Okay.
So that's rule number one. Is everybody goes on mute unless you're ready to talk. Now I'm going to go on mute as soon as I shut up. All right. So anyway, there's envelope clearly marked as wages for the boys earning doing farm work over the summer in the neighborhood, and the cops take the envelope. It's in the couch. All the police it does at them. You see, they're taking stuff from the boys' rooms, from the kids' rooms. Now the police are. They're not taking stuff from Shane's room or his wife's room. They're taking stuff from the 12-year-old kid. And the kid said, hey, trooper, this is my money. And the cops and the state trooper said to him, no, it's not anymore. It's mine now. And walked out the door. And then they said, we're going in the garage. And then he goes and grabs the key and says, we just put a new door in. Here's the key. Please don't break the door down. The state trooper says, no, that won't be necessary. And smashes the door down with the battering ram. When the key was offered to him and the whole entire situation was well secured already. It was secure before they got there. I mean, Shane was sleeping in his bed. And how about this? And one last little final disgusting bit of piggery by the New York State. Okay, police how about this? They requested an emergency warrant. Now Shane's not committing any criminal acts, and there's nothing in the indictment alleging that he did anything. He's just had the guns are in the house. He's in the house. He's got a prior to a drug house instead of a drugstore. Okay, let's go disarm him. In the process, we can steal $6,000 or maybe all his guns. So they asked for an emergency warrant from the judge, and they have a window of I think 10 days or something. The cops are waiting. You know, if it's such an emergency, they can have a warrant to get in this guy's house because what he's such a threat that they can wait a week. Want to know why they waited? This coming from inside sources. They wanted to wait because the two boys were at the grandmother's house because they had school off the week before Thanksgiving. The cops waited till the two teenage boys, one's 12, one's like 14, till they came because they were assuming that if the boys were there, there'd be a much less of a chance that Shane would shoot back. And so they literally used two children as human shields to go do a robbery and commit grand larceny at the home of Shane and Elizabeth Bennett. So, and now that the American Legion in Manchester is hosting a benefit, they're setting up this giant, overt, disgusting roadblock, hassling 75-year-old ladies, calling over 20 cars on Sunday morning when everybody's at church. You know, of all times to do that, as if there's a threat to national state security on Sunday morning when all the good people in Western New York are on their way to church or up to get a gallon of milk. Small community, farming communities up here. We're not talking about downtown Rochester. We're talking about way out in the city. So it's obscene what's going on out of this Troop E barracks on Route 332 in Canandaigua. Let me tell you this, folks. I wouldn't drive into Canandaigua if my life depended upon it. Do not go to Canandaigua Lake. Definitely do not go to the Hill Cumorah pageant, which is the Mormon idolatry festival that takes place also right up the road here in Ontario County, New York. I'd scribble Ontario County, New York off your list and fast. Sheriff here is perfectly happy to have changed the sheriff's star at the sheriff department from the 5-pointed, historically accepted, constitutional, typical, historic 5-point sheriff star that you would see on the old sheriff to the 6-pointed Masonic symbol. It's bizarre looking. And it's the exact symbol of the compass and square that you see on the Mason signs, blue road signs, and hey, if people don't believe me, don't go into the town, but drive up to it, turn around and leave. You will see the blue signs for yourself. I'll try to get some photos of it up on the internet, but it says right there, big road metal signs that say Mason, ancient, free, and accepted. I'll be the decider of who I'm going to accept or not. When anybody has to put up a sign in public that says, hey, we're accepted, you know they got some problems. Not at all are they accepted. And these are the people who are running the courts and running the sheriffs and running the police. Some of our judges, most of the judges, up to Al Gore. Al Gore's on the Mason on the internet as a top Tennessee Mason. Judge here, George Bartlett. George Bartlett III of Skoharie is a Freemason who was admitted to the bar in 1978. He was made a Freemason in 1975. And so, I mean, that just rolled it. I mean, that in their words, not mine. I was just reading the ballot, the official, what he wanted everybody to know about him. Hey, look at me. I hide in plain sight. Is the motto of the Illuminati. Hide in plain sight. To do that, people will be much less likely to believe that there's something wrong. Well, somebody would have had to say something. I would have had to hear this in the media. Why didn't somebody on the TV tell me? This was why I put my idiot box up by the curb 25 years ago. Because when you rely on people in the mainstream media, which now a whole bunch of supposedly alternative media operations have walked into, there's very little out there. So I hope people will value shows at least like this, where people are going to speak freely and speak honestly. Do you hear me pimping Donald Trump? Do you hear me pimping Ted Cruz? Do you hear me pimping anybody? Ron Paul was a decent man and would have made a great president. He was completely defrauded. The entire purpose of Donald Trump is to be put forth to take people's mind off Rand Paul and anything to do with ending the Fed. Let's just audit the Fed. Oh, really? Okay, so you're going to go up to a thief, an international war criminal, and band of thieves at the highest level and say, can we just look at your books and make sure your stealing is going along okay? Yeah, it's going along okay. It's going effing great. We're getting ripped off and the country is destroyed because private bankers calling themselves Federal Reserve print the currency and loan it to the government at 6% interest. Every dollar this government spends is putting us in debt deeper and deeper, and that's how they hold you by the short hairs. Well, not us, but more over the overlords in the state police and the legislature, the Senate and the Congress and the president and the witches' court. That's how they hang on to them. And people, so anyway, I wanted to give people an update on that. The benefit for the Bennetts is on the 5th, which is next Saturday, 4 to 10, at the American Legion in Shortsville, New York. And we need as many people to be there as possible. $10 for a ticket. We're trying to get some money back to the kids who had their money ripped off by the New York State Police, knowing it was the kids' money. How low do you have to be? They go into the room of a 12-year-old kid at a house you're ripping off. Shane had committed no criminal act. They just broke in at 3 in the morning with their faces covered. And I walked out and the kid says, that's my money. It says on the envelope, kid's money for working at the Bible and stuff. And the cop says, no, fine now. I steal from kids. Oh, by the way, you're going to support the police, right? Call us good guys. Because it's just only some bad cops. Not true. Every state trooper that works at Barracks Street is evil. At 332 on Canandaigua. I haven't seen one who does good work. Not one spoke out against it. Not once quit or resigned in outrage. And I sure would have quit if I was one of them a long, long time ago. Would never become one. The pushing contract law on free people in this republic is obscene. And it's treason. And treason is punishable by execution. Correct, Dave?
Hell yes. It is not permissible. It is required. That is considered, as far as I'm concerned, breaking of the public trust, which is, when you're entrusted with trust, you should be very, 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 very meticulous about making sure that you don't break that trust, because that is the highest form of crime, because your public officials, when you have public officials, who else can you trust? They should hold themselves to a higher moral standard. That's why treason is such a deal. How can we have people supposed to the law or enforcing anything who hold themselves to a lower moral standard than the rapists and thieves of the cities?
And the rapists and thieves now are wearing badges. They're learning contract law. They're learning that we're property. And if people want to try to make some sense out of this, get yourself a Black's Law Dictionary and open up the dictionary to the I section and look up the word in rem. The first word is in, I-N, as in Nancy. Then the second word is rem, small r, E, as in Eric, and M as in Michael. So in rem. I'm going to read this one more time, even though we've done this in a previous show. It bears repeating. Do you guys agree?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So, and this in rem that state of REM, state of being in REM, is the explanation, is the mechanism, is the legal mechanism that the world power players, I'll call them authorities, because to have authority you have to have God and you have to have validity and morality. They only have power, not authority. And power is fleeting, very fleeting. Nazis did these roadblocks and these roundups and these harassments and at the very end, and it's always at the very end. The beast usually kind of flails and wails as it's dying, and that's kind of what you're seeing right now in this corporate state, because people aren't going to have it. And I was really impressed. 70 people, 70 showed up at a little small town court that didn't even have security. It was just in a little kind of almost a little miniature kind of house type thing, and the place was completely packed. And the judge was flabbergasted. He's like, "Where's everybody going?" The court clerk says, "All these people who were in shame." His jaw fell on the ground, and he just sat there and watched the whole entire court empty out after Shane's case. So, and guess what? A lot of women, a lot of girls, teenage girls were there. And I can't get guys at the VFW. Some of them. I mean, the American Legion in Shortsville doing God's work by hosting the benefit. But some of these places I'll call and say, "Hey, I just want to let you know the American Legion over in Shortsville, your buddies over there are hosting the event on Saturday. Guys, I'm glad they remember that they took an oath to defend the Republic and the people against enemies, foreign and domestic." And a lot of them don't want to hear it. They want to sit around drinking beer and telling idiot war stories for the rest of their life and thinking that's cool and that's manly and that's going to keep us sick. I don't know what they're thinking about, but there's a bunch of gutless, puking cowards that I can't get to do shit as far as, but hey, guess what? Only 2 to 3% of the people want the American Revolution. And so, hey, I guarantee we got 5 to 7% now already. Probably way more, but active, we're between 5 and 10% activists right now. Some people doing something, whatever it may be, to return freedom to the people of this republic. So, and it's one county at a time. We can talk about that later. Taking back your county, the constitutional sheriff, a rewriting of the county charter to make it a constitutional charter. That's what it's going to be based on, and not corporate business law. It's coming out of the legislature with a bunch of attorneys passing around, quote, legal act. All their other lawyer buddies with the county for it. It's not their money. The Monroe County Legislature. They've gotten rid of the law that says you have to, for any legal services contract over $5,000, you have to take that in front of the legislature and get a vote on each one. You got rid of that. So now they're giving legal services contracts to all their lawyer buddies, and I'm sure getting a kickback, into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So they just file frivolous motions and actions that they know are going to go nowhere, and write letters and all this stuff is $300 or $400 an hour of therapy, which is frivolous and it's a felony. And so all these attorneys, by the way, the Bar Association is owned by the Crown of England. It's a private association. It's not a public thing. It's not. This is a private, and they're owned by the Crown of England, and they're being told, all the attorneys, that they have separate immunity. And that's why they're pulling all this crap and getting away with what they do. Because they're told, no, nobody's going to prosecute you. You got all the higher witches in the witches' court and the federal courts on your side. State police are on your side. Federal agencies and people stay stupid enough and coward enough. We can roll them. We can steal. We can make them pay rent on private property that they own. In a free republic, that we stop it on private property in the tax revolution. But here in REM, technical term used to designate actions or procedures. It's the thing. In contradistinction to personal actions, which are said to be in persona. Okay, so they're separating actions which are personal and actions which are geared to inanimate objects. Okay, an action in REM is a proceeding that takes no cognizance of owner, but determines right in specific property against all of the world, equally binding on everyone. Now I got to stop there. Did you all get that? This is proceeding in REM, which is the state that they put all private property and human flesh in this country in. This is why you see property getting rights and animals and people having none. Basically, everything's in REM as opposed to in persona. So an action, I want to read that opening paragraph again. An action in REM is a proceeding that takes no cognizance of owner, so they could care less who owns the stuff. But it determines rights. That means they're not talking about right or wrong. They're talking about rights, liberties, freedom in a specific piece of property against all of the world. So every time you go to court, every time you make a filing or a claim on your house, name anything, they're looking at it as world. Let's put it this way, folks. The global government's not coming. It's not on its way. It's not midway here. It's done. It's a done deal. It's locked up legally and lawfully in their eyes. They've already completed this. It's done. All the properties are put in a state of REM. Everybody's since the Cessna Cave Act of 1666 has been put by the Vatican in a state of trust, and it was set up originally so sailors and soldiers that went off to faraway places to do war, to do business, they get killed. They don't show up. It's years before anybody finds out what happens. There's no telephone to pick up the call and say, "How's Jack doing?" It's years. So they put everybody in trust until they came home, and then they'd have to work themselves out. And guess what? They just put everybody in trust now. When you get your birth certificate, that is a stock certificate that goes to Wall Street, Dun & Bradstreet. Fidelity, I believe, is involved with this. And it's a fiduciary instrument that the government takes out a bond on you when you're born. So basically, everybody listening to this show, and everybody who's not, pity them for the lack of knowledge. But yeah, listen, you've already been, but as soon as your birth certificate is as soon as you're born, your birth certificate is filled out, and it's taken out. A bond is taken out on you. That your certificate is actually a stock certificate. Why do you think you need a certificate of live birth? You're alive. You're breathing. You're there. Who are you reporting to? Think about it. Parents don't need a piece of paper that says I have a kid. Think about this. It's a fiduciary instrument, and by the time you get to age 30 or 40, there's tens of millions of dollars that you are worth. Now the question is, are you worth more dead or alive to the government? That's an insurance policy. Once you're out of the way, it's a $30 million that your life is. If you're 45 years old, let's just be like, here's a general example. You're 45. Your trust is worth $30 million. The government's laughing and smiling and saying, these idiots don't even know we took out a bond on their head of $500,000 or $1 million when they were born. And now the interest on that compounds up to 30 or 40 million. And they're sitting there going to work every day. Stupid idiots. Okay, so yeah, this is why the Masons will always say, you got the knowledge. This knowledge of things like this, your properties is them. So let me continue a little more with the definition of REM. There's only a couple more sentences, and then we'll get the point across. Because these actually make it give it a little more clarity. It is true that in a strict sense, proceeding in REM is one taken directly against property and has for its object the disposition of property. Get that? So they're going to be selling that. They're going to dispose of property without reference to the title of individual claimants. So did you get that? They are even telling you, we don't care if you have the title, which you don't. The title to your house is at the county clerk's office, and they give you a deed and demand $5,000 or however many thousands of dollars in rent on your private property in a free republic that was founded on private property rights in the tax revolution. So, but in a larger and more general sense, the terms are applied to action between parties where the direct object is to reach, dispose of interest therein, blah, blah, blah. Last paragraph. The proceeding in REM is one which is taken directly against property or one which is brought to enforce a right in the thing itself. So now they're talking about enforcing the rights of a piece of an inanimate. So you see how bizarre this is? They're enforcing rights, it says right here, which is brought to enforce a right in the thing itself. It's just giving your house a right. And since they own your house, now your house has more rights than the person who lives in it. So this is how they justify the cold, calculated brutality of the witches' court and the street Nazis who round up people and escort them in. Final sentence. Actions in which the court, this is in REM now, on a Black's Law 5th, what the attorneys use. Actions in which the court is required to have control of the thing or object, and in which an adjudication is made as to the object which binds the whole world and not simply the interests of the parties through the proceeding. So they're taking more account on how your property is bound to the world. And that means the Vatican, they're just not saying it in black. They're only going to give you so much honesty. And last sentence, what does it say? And not simply the interest of the parties to the proceeding. That should be the only interest, is the parties to the proceeding. So there it is. All property, including flesh, is put in a state of in rem. You as a person is in more of a state of trust than a state of rem. Property is in rem. It has been given rights, regardless who the claimant and the title holders are. And the man and the woman, as soon as you're born, are placed in a trust. Your trust is managed by basically the Vatican bank, and it's called your Cestui Trust. And it's called the Cestui C-E-S-T-U-I. Next word, K-Q-U-E. This is Latin crap. C-E-S-T-U-I, Q-U-E, and then V-I-E for life. I believe it was cessation of life. Because, if you were to die, it was a really good excuse for the royal families and their managers of the Vatican to start getting their hands on people's property. Sounded great. While you're going off to war, you're going off to sea for 5 years before you. We'll watch your stuff for you. Yeah. Boy, do they ever. Now they have it all. They're giving rights to property. They're putting people in the trust. Whenever you see your name spelled in all capital letters on a phone bill, on a traffic ticket, on a cable bill, on a bank statement, when your name is in all capital letters, which it should not be, it should be spelled properly. So Eric would be capital E, small R-I-C. You see capital E, all R-I-C, all caps. That's you're in a trust and someone is laying claim to you. So that's a lot to digest. I know for people that start out with understanding that the Vatican runs the show for the royal families who own the big block of stock in the Federal Reserve that print the currency and loan it to us at 6%. All property is which gives it rights. All flesh has been put in trust, which gives it none. And that's the long and short. Dave, you have anything to comment on that?
I don't have anything to comment on that, but I did want to do a little brief history of these SWAT teams and how this militarization began. Regarding that,
please go ahead. I'm going to mute myself.
Well, if we look at the history of what we now know as SWAT teams, that's the most common name for them. We look at the history. What happened was back in the 1960s and even the 50s, I can't remember, I believe it was in Tennessee, the Tennessee Uprising or whatever, Kentucky. It was one of those states back there. And there was a group of people who got PO'd at the local sheriff. So they went to the National Guard Armory. They checked out a whole bunch of dynamite and stuff. And they basically, these were World War II veterans, and they were so PO'd at him for all the corruption and stuff. I believe there was someone being unlawfully and illegally held there. Both those words are important. But basically what happened was they started throwing sticks of dynamite out on the front steps of his office. And scared him so bad, I believe it was within 12 hours, he surrendered himself, allowed himself to be arrested by someone. They voted in right there on the spot. And this is one of those things, I can't remember. I'll try to get the info for you guys when I get a chance. But this is one of those
Tennessee. I forget the name of the town. It was Tennessee, I'm pretty sure. Eastern Tennessee,
Yeah, I thank you for that, Eric. But if you can find that out for me, that'd be great. I can't remember. I talked to someone whose father actually was there. And he said that by the time they were done, the government was so scared, and all the law enforcement agencies were corresponding with the FBI. I can't remember. The OSS, I believe, had become the CIA by that point. I can't remember, but there was all these internal memos about that this showed how weak the U.S. was against what they called extremists at the time. This was part of Operation Paperclip. This was why they were so scared, was they saw a few well-trained well-disciplined men could do, okay? And they saw how you really don't want to PO the local inhabitants. Well, what happened was they tried to suppress that as much as they can, but what happened was I believe there was about 3% of local law enforcement within a year of that. Within a year of that date, they had created. This is in the early 50s, I believe. Within a year of that date, it might have been late 50s. I'm sorry, but within a year of that date, they had started what they called community emergency response teams. This is before search and rescue, okay? And these guys were trained to do the search and rescue and stuff, but they were also sworn in as deputies to stop local uprisings. They taught military tactics and were told that no one without a permit could protest. This is part of why law enforcement now is told that you need a permit to peacefully protest. And that's when the certs were born. And by the early 1960s, the Vietnam War had started, and we got veterans flowing in, and the police departments are going, you know what, we could really improve our capabilities if we brought military tactics in and trained our own special operations or special forces style using guerrilla tactics and things like that to increase in psychological warfare to increase our effectiveness. This is why you'll see that a lot of local law enforcement buy very large professional sound equipment. I've seen it happen before. They did this to a neighbor about 30 minutes up the road from me. They took 3 big speakers strategically placed around his house, shined spotlights in the middle of the night, were moving the spotlights around and things like that, and made it sound like helicopters are up there. They didn't have any helicopters. They made him believe there were helicopters up there. It's all a psychological game to them. They're looking for any advantage they can get because they know they can't win us. That's why the media has been conditioning us to be okay with this. So by the time the CERT teams were starting to get pretty well militarized, and this is back when they were all carrying, like, they were lucky if they carried a rifle and they had 4 rounds in a shotgun, okay? Then by the late 60s, with a lot of Vietnam veterans returning, especially from special forces and things like that, they were offered jobs at places 90 seconds where the first SWAT team was officially made. SWAT stands for Special Weapons and Tactics. Okay, it is a SWAT team, a Special Weapons and Tactics team. You will notice that at that point in time, the first call that I'm aware of is the LAPD, the first official large SWAT team, went on. They were out there. They had M16s. The guy had an M1 carbine, and anyone with a small 60 seconds, that guy with the M1 carbine was outgunned. But they were so scared because he was shooting so many rounds that they justified the use of hand grenades on this man and literally burnt the house down around him. Doesn't this sound familiar? No one survived that experience. Then you saw the rise of like the Black Panthers and things like this in the 50s and 70s. And so a lot more of the law enforcement decided, oh, you know, these SWAT teams would be great. So what they did was they tried to build them as a public safety thing. You know, all the SWAT teams, when they first came out, I got a flyer that my grandfather gave me that shows their SWAT team there in Santa Cruz County, California, with the SWAT team with Special Weapons and Tactics, but their primary goal was search and rescue. And this is like from I believe, the early 80s. That's what they sent out a flyer because they were protesting. Okay? So what they do is they always try to justify their existence, okay? So then what we see is teams like what Eric has told us about, SORT, SORT teams. That stands for Special Operations Response Teams. The SORT teams originated in the military. SWAT teams did not. Their tactics originated from the military, but the name did not. SORT teams originate from SORT teams, which are fast response, special operations response teams that have capabilities that we used to know in the in the early days of like following World War II and around World War II is Strike One outfits, where they were deployable anywhere in the world in 24 hours, which was a big deal back then, which isn't now. But anyhow, SWORD stands for Special Operations Response Team. Anyone who tells you different is full of it. Now, some of the sheriff's departments and state teams and stuff, they've renamed it, but it is still a CERT team. That's where it originated. And then if we use Nazi Germany as an example, what happened was I will try to get the research together. I'm sure I've got the book somewhere. But there was actually a guy who did a law enforcement, keyword here, law enforcement, perspective on Nazi Germany and the evolution of their tactics and things. What they did was, first thing they did was they brought the military tactics into the Gestapo, into the police force, and then they started justifying their use, and they started picking on the people to see that what they do is it's always constantly testing boundaries. That's why they're constantly changing their names and stuff. Honestly, everyone should be outraged that they have special operations response teams at the local level. Why the hell do you need a whole bunch of Navy SEAL wannabes? I'm sorry, but why do you need those in a rural upstate New York county? I'm sure Eric will agree with me on that.
No, we don't need them around here. No, yeah, we can go buy like that, send them overseas. Don't, because they're terrorizing people there too. They need to be put in prison in that case.
So freaking put them in Siberia, let the Russians show them what a gulag is like, and maybe they'll have some time to repent for their sins before they freeze to death.
And then when World War III goes hot, we're in the beginning cool phases now. When it goes hot, they need to go to the southern Russia, like Georgia, and see like some real people and see how they like it.
Well, and let me tell you, so the fourth iteration of this, the fourth step is what you're going to see happen with the Gestapo. We're starting to see it around the country now, is where private contractors, ghost teams, CIA wet assets, the equivalent of the CIA wet assets, in Germany, they were using SS, trained assassins, to go and remove political opposers, just like CIA wet assets do now. Okay?
Those are the guys who hit Lavoy Finicum, Mr. Lavoy, was it Finicum in Oregon there? That was, I contest that to the assassination. That guy was a political figure in the freedom movement. Absolutely, that was a premeditated roadblock, and there was a premeditated shot they took. They shot to kill. That was an assassination, not a murder. Definitely not. I definitely don't want to hear people tell, like I'm hearing from a lot of reporters, supposedly in the alternative media, the police are using federal police use of excessive force. Use of excessive force.
It was an assassination. That is not an excessive force. That is a blatant disregard for human life and God-given rights. These rights are not granted to you by the government. They are granted to you by the Creator. That is that works. Because if rights are granted by the government, that means that the government can take them back whenever the hell they want. Our founding fathers were at least smart enough to realize that. But you see, that fourth iteration is what really should worry people. If we keep putting these SWORD teams and the SWAT teams, I'm in a small county. My county is a hell of a lot bigger than Eric's is. And now, granted, we have a lot less people, but we have a SWAT team out here, okay? It is such a joke, it's not even funny. But for these guys, I met one of their guys. He tried to say that a friend of both mine and Eric's, this guy tried to lie and broke court procedure by calling himself an expert witness and a witness to the crime, which is a conflict of interest. And he tried to say that because he was a SWAT officer, he was qualified. I have more training than he does. Okay? The guy tried to tell me that the reason police officers are exempt from if their bullets hit someone is because they wouldn't have had to shoot if you would have complied. So I said, of course, being the smart ass I am, I asked him very politely, so if I was raping your wife and I gave the order and you didn't follow it, and I shot you with your and your phone. And, now it comes up to like, oh, well, you're threatening me? No, I'm asking a hypothetical question because I don't see the reason behind it. If you're held to a lower moral standard than the people you're sworn to protect, how can you be trusted to protect them? This is how we need to educate people, is that these SWAT teams and stuff, you don't have to have a SWAT team. All the SWAT teams are patrol guys or patrol guys and or detectives, whatever the case may be, even sometimes sergeants and stuff. All they are guys who keep the bulletproof vest and have a little bit more training in their trunk. They keep the stuff in the trunk and they respond in a worst case scenario. They don't need a special patch to do that. If that's what they're really supposed to do. No, it's more about fear tactics. I guarantee you, Eric, you talk to people who are gun owners who are aware of that case, I guarantee you a lot of them are afraid because they saw what happened to Shane. Correct?
Oh yeah, no, it's true, but fear does not get you freedom. And once again, if we had people like that, which we did at the time of the American Revolution, it's a good thing that everybody was like that because we wouldn't have anything going down right now. We'd be a British doctorate. It'd be complete. It'd be a nightmare. Way more than it is now.
Right now.
Yeah.
We see the same things right now.
People have to look. I've had a woman in Oregon look me dead in the eye and say, "Don't submit to the fear." And she had more guts than most men I know. I mean, what is this? And you're right, Dave. They are people do get, they do get a dose of fear. But hey, life is short. Eternity is long. What are you going to do? You're going to give your children and grandchildren a broken down old pile of junk country with 30% unemployment, private banks loaning the currency to the government and interest and laughing at us when when our Congress and our Treasury Department is supposed to be printing our own currency like Kennedy tried to do a little while before he got killed by the bankers. Okay, so hey, you got two choices. You can get up and have courage. Courage is the foremost of all virtues. Because without it, you'll never have any of the others. Okay, so people remember that. And
remember that even God in Joshua, I believe it's Joshua 1 verse 10, says, "Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, do not be afraid, do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." If you don't serve God, you have the right to be afraid. But if you serve our Creator, then you have no right to be afraid. And I would ask another question, is if you do serve our Creator, or if you don't serve our Creator, start asking thought-provoking questions. For your place in eternity, have you chosen a smoking or non-smoking suite? I don't know about the rest of the listeners, but I've chosen my place to stand. My place to stand is to stand for what is right over who is right, because that is the righteous thing to do.
Well, how about Psalms 94:16? Who will rise up for me against the evildoers? Or who will stand up for me against the workers of iniquity? That was not me who said the or. That was God repeating himself. And very real because we do that. So who will rise up for him against the evildoers? Who will stand up against the workers of iniquity? He's looking for help to bring this place back to honor as it is in heaven. He didn't say turn it over to Satan. He said storm the gates of hell. Come what may, don't worry about winning the battle. The victory is God's. We're just supposed to fight the Antichrist system as best we can, care for others by going to do court of observing when people get railroaded by the street Nazis, get dragged into the witches' court for stupid stuff, even if it's a small ticket thing. Take it to trial. Demand an affidavit from the victim of your crime. Super claiming you did him harm, and put him on the stand and cross-examine him. Take it to trial, cost your town $20,000. Do it. Make it. If everybody did that, the stickers would stop tomorrow. Demand an affidavit from the victim of your crime, and when you walk in, and the first thing I like to say is this: when you walk into court, the assistant DA is going to come running up to you. He's going to come waddling up like a troll and say, "Hey, what do you got there?" And you have a ticket in your hand, and he'll say, "Oh, wow, I'll tell you what, we'll please this down to a." If it's like a speeding ticket or so, say, we'll please this down to just leaving your car by the side of the road. and it'll only be a $50 fine instead of $250, and of course, then you won't get any points on your license, and that'll be a state surcharge of $110. And okay, and you look him right in the eye and say, "Excuse me, are you just asked me to commit perjury? You're asking me to plead guilty to a crime I didn't do to get a better deal." Now, that perjury, and I'm going to tell that to the judge first thing when I get up into the court on the record, and I'm also going to have you disbarred for subornation of perjury. You're asking me to go before a judge and say I left my car by the side of the road overnight. So that's a great way to start off any court proceedings. And usually, oh no, I'm telling you, I'm just a plea. No, it's not the same as a lie. Well, you're lying. We're going to be lying to the judge if I tell him I left my freaking car by the side of the road overnight. Let's take this to trial. Put the trooper on the stand. I went to court observing at the trial of a guy here in Webster, New York. He took it, smart guy, took it to trial. Defended himself, wore the coat and tie. Really well-spoken dude, one of us, and put the trooper on the stand. The judge, you could see it. He was steaming the whole time. He couldn't wait. He's like, the judge had to explain to the local accounting, the local money players like Arnie Rothschild. We have a person here in Western New York named Arnie Rothschild, who is basically the kind of the hands-on manager for the banking establishment for this part of the state. So anyway, he put the trooper on the stand. The judge, boy, was pissed, and didn't give it just made it so impossible on this gentleman of the picture. You could tell that the decision was, but he went through the motions of taking a trial, and that was essential because guess what? I was able to witness something that is a very simple happening at that trial that really gets the explanation through to Mr. Average Mr. and Mrs. Middle America. And what happened was the trooper went on the stand and said, he said two things that struck me. He said, first of all, he was not certified as an expert in laser speed detectors, even though that's what he was using. And although the judge still accepted the testimony as expert qualified testimony, then the trooper said, Tim said, he said, how far was the distance? And the guy said, how far was the distance from you with the laser detector to my car when you clocked me? And the trooper said, what the hell did he say?
90 seconds.
50 feet. Almost 12. It was between 1150 and 1200 feet. And he said, how far is the laser detector that you're using? What is its maximum range? Acceptable to retain and still retain acceptable accuracy. What's it good to? How far? 1,000 feet. So he clocked this guy cheating 15% over the absolute highest end of what these machines are accurately certified for. And that's way beyond reasonable doubt. The standard in any trial is reasonable doubt. If there's reasonable doubt, of course, the judge is interesting that this judge Thomas DeSalvo should be put in prison for. And I will if I can someday, I will make sure it happens. I saw him abuse this guy. And he stood up there running his own jury in his own trial. There was no jury allowed. No, you can't have a jury. No, bench trial only. Bench trial only. Hello, right here. It says in the Constitution that the accused shall enjoy a speedy and public trial by a jury of his peers, and the right to trial by jury shall be preserved. It says it multiple times in the Constitution. You get a trial of any matter over $20, you have to have an indictment. This is going to be a matter of hundreds of dollars and points on his license. It could cost this guy thousands of dollars to get a speeding ticket in New York. So anyway, the judge is running his own scam. If you had a jury that was objective, the jury would say, sit down and say, well, the machine rated for 1,000 feet, and we're talking 1150. That's 15% over the high end of accuracy. It's definitely reasonable to believe that machine was not accurately clocking that car. 15% over its maximum rating. Hello? That should have been dismissed right there. Not guilty. Bang. Bye. Have a nice day, dude. No, of course not. No, guilty. You know, although the judge didn't declare the guilty at the trial. He said, "I'll let you know by mail." So they're getting a little bit worried and a little bit scared when they see observers show up. You know, look, you can either be a coward, people, and try to stay home and pretend that they don't know who you are, or you can suck it up and go out, do some court observing, meet some people, form little groups that will do freedom things together, and then you can go do a protest and actually make a difference. We have had success with the court observers. I firmly believe Stephen Dean would be in prison right now if it weren't for, you know, the court observers and all of them. I'm not talking me, but everybody, what they did to put the pressure on the court. Judge Benson, federal judge Benson of the 4th District, Salt Lake, said on the record, he said, this was at Stephen Dean's release hearing, 82 days they held on to Stephen Dean, who had committed nothing other than take 2 shots with the rifle that the undercover FBI handed him at a shooting range. That's it. Stephen Dean had a prior statutory felony from 15 years ago, so the FBI is keen on him, just like they keyed in on Shane here in New York. And they said, we can set him up. So a couple undercover guys befriended him. They said, hey, you want to go out to the shooting range, Hot Springs, take a few plates at the target? He said, sure. He didn't have a gun, so they handed him the gun at the shooting range. He took 2 or 3 shots, and then they went home. And then 2 or 3 months later, they arrest him. And I guarantee, and I know what I'm talking about, this was the opening, this was what Jade Helm entirely was designed for. It was to see if they could do a Patriot takedown. And Stephen Dean was like one of the first, because what did the prosecuting attorney say when they brought him up in front of the judge for his arraignment? We need to deny him bail. He did nothing. He took a couple rounds at the target and went home. And they handed him the gun. I'll tell you about that in a second. In front of the arraignment judge, the prosecuting attorney said, deny him bail. He's a political, he said, what did they say? He affiliates with political organizations who are anti-government. They didn't even accuse him of being a terrorist or being violent. They just said he hangs out with a liberty group. That was it. And the judge, the first arraignment judge, recused herself halfway through because she knew what was going on. Didn't want to have anything to do with it. The next magistrate Pete, came in. He was perfectly happy. He was the Mason. He was perfectly happy to hang out with Stephen Dean and deny him bail. Mafia hitmen in Manhattan, in New York, get bail, and they were denying bail to Stephen Dean. So after 82 days, they finally cut him a deal, which I'm glad he signed, because look, anybody of you out there, if you're in jail and they ask you to sign something, you sign it and you're under duress, okay? And if you write it on there, they're going to freak out. I'd say, look, because that's what the term duress, the Nazis did this. Sign this piece of paper, you're never going to get out of jail. Sign it. When you get out, revoke, you write it, the first thing you do is post an affidavit on the internet and say, I hereby rescind the document that I made under duress. I was forced to do this by incarceration and torture. Sign your name, and that's it. And you rescind your document. I don't begrudge anybody signing anything when they're in jail. That's what the term under duress is meant for. Okay, sign the damn stupid piece of paper, cross your fingers behind your back, and walk out. The Bible says it's okay to lie to the enemy. You don't have to serve Satan by being honest to the wicked one. You do what you have to do to get out of jail. You're not going to be held to any document that you sign in jail to get out. So sign the thing, get your ass out of there, and then you can take on the beast from a position of outside rather than inside. If you're in jail, you can't do nothing. You pay $15 for a phone call. You can barely get a pencil to write with. How are you going to write your documents? They're going to hang you up and hang you out to dry. So you want to get yourself out of there, and then you absolutely can just make it clear. A very simple document that, and publicly, that you were under duress, you were under torture, and you were denied your lawful right to freedom. You were unlawfully imprisoned, malicious prosecution, deprivation of deprivation of and conspiracy against civil rights under Title 18. Highwaymen operating under color of laws, corporate agents, Title 42. There's all kinds of things you can do. And of course, paperwork's an uphill climb. This is why the public pressure is key. You can have the best paperwork in the world, but if nobody's calling and you don't have any support, any observers there, you have a dozen people hundreds calling in. They're going to bury your paperwork at the bottom of the pile. They'll conveniently lose it. They'll say they didn't get it. They'll pull all kinds of crap. So I saw a judge in Rochester, New York, violate his own written ruling, totally blatantly and openly. He made a ruling that said there was a Citibank, Bank of America foreclosing on a house they had never owned. The guy was disputing it. The judge wrote a ruling that said, well, I can't really rule in favor of the bank if they don't send an attorney in to argue the case, So it was just saying, hey, Bank of America, at least send a lawyer in, put some money in our pocket. So it said the release will not be granted. It means the Bank of America wouldn't get to steal this guy's house if there was no appearance by their attorney. 3 times Bank of America failed to send an attorney, and Judge Doyle still ruled in their favor, in violation of his own written ruling. I mean, where are you going with that? I mean, so what are you going to do? You can have Perry Mason common law paperwork, the best in the world. You can be the king of paperwork. The public pressure is the key. Public pressure trumps paperwork every time. But paperwork's essential. That's why I'm glad my friend took his speeding ticket to trial. I took my doggy leash ticket thing to trial. They gave me a ticket to grab my dog off the leash at 7:30 in the morning in the woods in the middle of a park where nobody was. 400-acre park. It was just barely daylight out. And the cop trying to run over me with his car. It was just awful. It got awful. And so it was just, and that's what kind of spawned the court of service locally, and then it went national when I hooked up with the National Liberty Alliance, and then the National Liberty Alliance put me out the pasture because I was talking about the Vickers and the Masons. Here I am.
Can I make a comment here?
Please.
Well, I think you'll say that I've said this a million times to you at least, but this is where people have to really understand we have to pick and choose our battles, and we have to realize that we don't have to win every freaking battle, people. It's winning the important ones that are going to change the outcome of the war. It is not winning every battle that matters.
I agree. I was talking to Eric last night, and like many times throughout my life as a patriot, also as a Christian, there's always been somebody that's a naysayer, and they'll always try to put in your head that you can't do this. It's a fruitless battle. And the problem is they see like short term. They don't understand how this works in incrementalism. We didn't get in this problem overnight. It took a long time to get here, and it's going to take a long time to get out of this. And first thing that we got to do basically is what Eric and I have been doing here is this courtroom observing. That's a great place to start. Second place that you can start is your locally politically. Become a committee man. As a committee man, you get the opportunity to elect your officials. So if you run as a committee man and you get enough patriots in your neighborhood, in your city, in your county that are running as committee men, guess what's going to happen? You're not going to have to just vote for the lesser of two evils. You'll be able to get some people in there that are good, that are honest, that believe in the rule of law, and it's not going to happen unless we the people actually get involved in doing this. Another good thing that has been talked about on this program is the grand jury process, the local grand juries. I know Eric knows a lot more about this. I know that in Monroe County and the surrounding counties, they actually already have grand juries and people ready to join the grand juries if and when it's needed. Eric, do you want to explain to people a little bit about this grand jury process?
Yeah, there are grand juries. You can call it either the common law grand jury or the citizen grand jury. Some people are sketchy about using the word citizen because it means your entity is subject to the jurisdiction of a certain, it kind of not, it's not quite the full free man thing. But whether you want to call it the citizen grand jury or the common law, either one's fine with me. The point is, the people that call it the citizen grand jury don't mean any harm. It's just that the better word is the common law grand jury. But either one, and what it is it has to be 25 people. This is an ancient, lawful, historically accepted, and Supreme Court approved. I believe Scalia, who just passed away, was most likely killed, assassinated. The last, but anyway, got off track here for a second. Even the Supreme Court had affirmed in the Williams decision that the grand jury is the most powerful branch of government, more powerful than the president, who's strictly the chief executive of a small 17 things that the government is supposed to do inside a 10-mile square area. And both of those things are in the Constitution. There's only 17 or 18 items that the federal government has jurisdiction over them. None of it is owning land. None of it is putting together, FBI counterterrorism, garbage crap. What all they do is create a huge setup, make it look like they're needed. I mean, everything they do is a setup. I'm firmly convinced, 95% of what these federal agencies do is created by their own doing. They find useful idiots. They buy them a bunch of weapons or bomb-making materials, and then they arrest the person. So it's basically creating chaos that they capitalize on. Once again, the Hegelian dialectic: create the problem, offer the solution, right in as the savior, fix everything, and you've just basically conquered the world by creating little crises everywhere, little false flags. As Dave said, redirected events is what they call it in the military, and yeah, they're redirecting a lot of people with these, steering reality. So don't give the enemy, give the enemy any. Don't believe in the false reality, and definitely don't give the enemy the use of the language. Listen to what they say. Don't let them change words or co-opt words, turn them into different things. So anyway, back to the citizen. The word citizen should be fine to use, but it's been interjected in some court decisions and some legislation that's opposite freedom. So we're careful how we use the word citizen. But the common law grand jury is 25 is an ancient mechanism that's in effect to this day with grand juries. Unfortunately, modern grand jury of the system of the quote corporate government is a tool of the district attorney, who's nothing but a member of the bar that's owned by the Crown of England, that's told he has sovereign immunity so he can get away with whatever he wants to do. He's looking to make money. He's looking to control the public. He's looking to please the Vicar General. The Vicar General, there's one in every city. Look it up yourself. Your Vicar General is the tax collector for the Vatican. Collects a lot of money through business tax, through property tax, especially through the court, and Catholic Charities and Catholic Family Center, as the appointed administrator and executors and powers of attorney over people's estates into the millions of dollars. People's Social Security settlements. I know one person personally is going through that. Children seized by CPS, dished off to Catholic Charities to be quote unquote examined, and then off to the biggest pedophile network in the world, the Catholic Church. So anyway, the common law grand jury would be, so you don't have any faith. We don't have any faith or trust in a quote-unquote typical grand jury. Some grand juries have set in place with the same people on them for decades. That's completely unlawful. You put a grand jury in place for an event, and you disband it. You don't stick it in there like Robespierre and the sheriff of Nottingham don't beat them for as long as he's alive for 40 years. You're going to have the same grand jury in place. Grand jury is per crisis, per crime, per event that it's needed, per time that you have to actually use it. And then it goes away, and then you reconvene if there's a real crime. There's really no real crime around. I haven't seen a major crime that needed a grand jury in a long time. They have to make up stuff like with Shane. He's sleeping in his house with guns. They pass a law that says he can't have guns because he's got a prior conviction. What's he supposed to do? Get rid of his entire gun collection, turn it into the state? No, he continued sleeping in his bed with his wife and going to work the next day and raising 2 sons on a farm. And, they destroyed it. Rammed down his door at 3 in the morning. And once again, you've heard the whole story. I told it before. So the common law grand jury is essential. the district attorney is never going to prosecute. This is why I have disagreements with Sheriff Richard Mack of the CSPOA, Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers of America. They're not for real. I mean, they're for real about 20%, and then the other 80% is going to kill all of us. Because here's the problem. Sheriff Mack is always saying, well, we educate our sheriffs on how to, resist federal tyranny and how to, resist unlawful aggression by the federal government and what their job is as a government. Well, wait a minute. Whoa. Right now, I can make the case very easily. I won't take too much time doing it. But the tyranny of the local is far worse than the tyranny of the federal. Hello. The new law it's bogus bullshit statute. The new statute that says you can't have more than 10 rounds in your clip anywhere in New York. The police were even in violation until they exempted them. That's a statute, bro. That's not a federal. Mute yourself, guys. Mute. Who's ever got the background noise, got to go muted. I'll let you in a second to respond. All this garbage about you can't have a bayonet lugger, the new AR that's designed for New York State to make it New York legal has no pistol grip on it. Imagine an AR with no pistol grip. It's insane. Okay, so these aren't federal. No, this is all state, and it's being enforced by the county. So, what are we going to do? There was this, and Sheriff Mack says, well, we don't need the common law grand jury. It gets in the way, and he doesn't say why it gets in the way or how. He just says it gets in the way. He doesn't come up with any reason why it's not lawful, and he hasn't. And I'm glad. It sounds like it actually kind of, at least philosophically, he knows that it's that lawful and it's effective. He just doesn't like it, and I'll tell you why. He's perfectly happy, so it's real easy to resist those feds who live 2,000 miles away, and they come out to little hit squads, and they disappear, come and go, depending on how much the locals resist. What are you going to do about the local judge that lives right down the street? How about the troopers at that roadblock on Route 96 that I just told you about earlier in this interview? What are we going to do about that? We're going to let them ride off into the sunset with all their stolen booty and abusing a 75-year-old woman who could barely walk by throwing her in the back of a state trooper car to sit there and rot in the cage while they ransacked her car because she didn't renew her paperwork on her idiot registration sticker? Going to take my venison from my buddy because it didn't have a hunting tag on it. It was cut into steaks already. It was ready to roast. Okay? What are we going to do about that? I don't think it's appropriate to let those, ride off into the sunset with all their stolen booty, like Blackbeard and the Pirates. Give them a pass. They know it's all good. No problem. Let's just move forward from here and hope that I don't hear Sheriff Mack talking about going down to the county clerk's office, giving everybody the title to their property back. What's this bull crap? What's this scam that he's never talking about where the county clerk sits on the title to everybody's house that they already paid for and gives them a deed? Very few people have the title to their house. It's sitting down at the county clerk's office. You got a deed to your house. Why do you think that is? Because your property is in rent. They're all your property. Your property has rights bound to the world. The deal's already done. The Vatican already owns your house. And unless you pay them, on my mom's house, I think it was $6,000 a year for a teeny, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house on a teeny little lot. $6,000 a year. So the town of Brighton, New York, could go out and buy a fleet of Mercedes ambulances and then charge everybody on top of it who jacked in their taxes. Help pay for that and a bunch of other garbage. Charge you $100 or $200 for every ambulance ride. What are the taxes paying for? Okay, so they're not paying for anything. You can have a bake sale every Saturday and keep the lights on at the local school and water running. It doesn't cost very much to pay a couple of dozen teachers. An electric bill of a couple $100 a day, and running water, and whatever. They don't even have books anymore. Everything's computerized, and they don't even let the computers go through their duration of life. They replace them every year or two at the behest of the corporate prostitutes in the state government. Time for new computers. Oh, really? You don't have an arrangement with Microsoft, do you? So anyway, back to the common law grand jury. So you ain't trusted no district attorney or Sheriff Richard Mack of the constitutional sheriff, supposedly constitutional, okay? Because look, he's not going to go out and arrest the local judge. He's not going to arrest the state troopers that were doing that roadblock and go to their house on Sunday morning. I think it would be entirely appropriate to arrest these troopers at 9 o'clock, 9:30 on Sunday morning while their wife's in her panties running around and the kids are, in diapers. Yep, right up to their toes. Come on outside. They resist arrest. They get taken down with violent force. Do that. That's what they did to us. It'll be lawful. We have a citizen grand jury or common law grand jury of 25 that brings a presentment to a constitutional sheriff, determines if there's enough evidence, presenting those to the grand jury. Grand jury decides whether to pass an indictment. If there's an indictment, there's an arrest order issued to the sheriff, takes his posse of a couple hundred people up to the trooper's house, kicks his door in and drags his ass out by his ear just like he did to everybody else. Takes his car, closes his car, okay, puts a notice on the door, he got 3 days to move out, just like they did with everybody else. There's a prostitute wife and the little kids that have to go by and stay with grandma like everybody else did. Okay, and so I think that's entirely fair. I think what's good for the goose is what's good for the gander. Justice is meted out, I think, on an even basis. We can be very forgiving. We don't have to torture anybody, but justice has to be done. And Sheriff Richard Mack and your local district attorney, none of them are going to be doing you any justice. They're too ignorant. You think they want to go, what? I mean, their wives play bridge together. Their kids probably play Little League baseball together. Sheriff Mack doesn't want to upset the apple cart and actually do his having job by going out and arresting the local corporate floors that are destroying the community. He just wants to take everybody, all his eyes over to Washington, D.C. and fight the Fed. Well, what are you going to do to fight local tyranny, folks? You got to have a common law. That's where the common law grand jury comes in. He doesn't want any indictments coming from the people saying, this judge stole my house, violated his oath under Article 6, Clause 3, violated my due process under the 14th Amendment, which sucks, but it still says no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. I could go on and on and on. All the federal codes and the statutes and the precepts and the constitutional and Supreme Court decisions. He doesn't want to deal with that. They have the little kids down at the Little League baseball. Why did your daddy have to arrest my daddy? Because your daddy's a Nazi and he had to go to jail. And he was abusing people, so he could deal with it. I'm sorry. It's not. Their justice has to be done. I know they didn't get most of the top Nazis, but after World War II, they went through the motions of the Nuremberg trial, and they hung 40 or 50 or 60 guys who were high level and a couple of hundred lower level guys. And then the rest of them, foolishly, they let them go. And where did they end up? In the East German Stasi under Marcus Wolf. And Marcus Wolf, after East Germany merged back with West Germany, Marcus Wolf, the head of the Stasi, who hired his former Gestapo agents after World War II, came here to found the Department of Homeland Security and advised, all the people who developed that atrocity into what it is today, where they're charging the Hammonds in Oregon with terrorism for starting a backfire that was typically normal procedure to try to stop another fire that had been set by the Fed and was burning out of control. They were basically managing their own land, and the government doesn't like that. They don't want to acknowledge any private property. Once again, all the property has been put in the state of rep. So,
can I chime in?
Yeah, chime in, Dave. You go right ahead. But I wanted to, I think I explained what the common law grand jury is. It's 25. Here's the rub. We need real constitutional sheriffs. I call them common law sheriffs, who are going to honor the citizen grand jury. As long as it's not used frivolously, we're not going to go revenge on people who don't, need to be charged with anything. But people who really abuse the people of the community, like those troopers at the roadblock, dragging an old lady out of her car, sitting here in a cage while they ransack her vehicle because her paperwork isn't in order. She's 75 years old. She can barely walk. That's real nice public service, isn't it? No, those guys need to be brought to justice. Has to be done, and the district attorney won't do it. So the citizen grand jury of 25, and here's the rub. You need a real common law sheriff to honor the enforcement of the citizen grand jury. Dave?
Okay, as far as the Hammonds up in Oregon go, I got family who lives up there, and I know people who were intimately involved in the situation up there. And I'll tell you part of the reason why Sheriff Mack is being such a dumbass about this. He's talking to Sheriff David Ward, who's over that county, who's a piece of crap. Okay? The reason David Ward is pissed off is because the citizens grand jury or the common law grand jury or the people's grand, whatever the hell you want to call it, they found documents right there on the refuge that implicated literally tens of thousands of federal agents in not only committing war crimes, but violating every right we can possibly imagine, purposely setting those fires to burn those houses down, and then come in with the EPA to say, oh, well, see, you're not managing your land well, so now we get to seize your property. So the reason they were so mad about that was because they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar. And, you know, people like Sheriff David Ward and Sheriff Richard Mack, you know, when they get their ego, they let their ego control their life, and they don't like their life getting any harder. You know, they don't know what an honest day's work is. You know, today, what I did, I woke up at 5:30 in the morning, I was splitting wood, working out in my garden, and getting crap done that I need to get done, okay? See, the thing is, the Bible says specifically, cursed be the ground for thy sake. That's what God said to Adam, okay? You know why he said that? Because hard work is one of the best things for you. If you don't have hard work, you go get yourself into trouble. You look at like the youth these days. You know why they're getting into trouble? Because they got nothing to do. They got nothing honest to keep them out of trouble. Okay? Yeah, and this is part. Go ahead, Ryan. Well, this is part of the problem is, you know, we're giving these guys basically a license to steal, as I'm sure Eric will agree with me on. And we're not only doing that, we're also encouraging this pack-like gang mentality. You know, the NYPD is the largest law enforcement agency in the country, and a friend of mine who's in the FBI says that is the largest organized crime syndicate he's ever worked with in his life. And he's with the FBI. So what does this say when we got these problems? You see, what I hear Sheriff Mack saying, oh, you know, he's not mentioning, he's only talking about one of the effects that has happened. The problem is an unlawful government that is lied, or a corporate entity who has lied and made people believe that they are a lawful government, and then being given credit by people like Sheriff Mack. You know, the problem is Sheriff Mack is not well enough educated, he's not well enough spoken, and honestly, I don't think he's qualified to be a constitutional sheriff and peace officer. Yeah, he fought the Brady Bill. Why didn't he fight every other dirty law on earth?
90 seconds.
This was doing security for Mr. Mack up there was our friend Oathkeepers, Daniel. I know you love them.
Don't even get me started on Oathkeepers.
Right. Yeah, they're not really worth discussing on the program here. We've talked about them before, and it's a waste of time. Definitely.
Well, let me talk about the infiltrators for a minute. Just let's all be brief, and then Dave can take over.
60 seconds.
Get something to drink for a minute. But if you call, Daniel was mentioning to me the other day that he was getting some grief from some people who were complaining on one of his website groups. And I made the point, and I said, Daniel, don't forget, corporations have basically an endless bank account for disinformation specialist, tell. But yeah. Counter. Right. So as people come, Daniel, I mean, have you, as soon as you said GMO food, I said, no, I'm right on this one. I don't want to be too conspiratorial and just go to it, but listen, there's endless amounts. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands, if you include InfraGard, even more. But there are just endless amounts of trolls, and I hate to use that word because it doesn't really. There's people, most of them graduates of early, right out of college, younger, looking for. There's no work out there. They're for jobs they wind up doing for either corporations or for the government, either for a private corporation or the government corporation. They end up doing all kinds of COINTELPRO information, countering the complainers and the truth tellers like us. It happens all the time. They're out there just surfing the net, looking for places where they can prop up the system and earn a few bucks defending Monsanto GMO foods. So now let me be specific, because so I've just been kind of made a general statement. Eric, when you got to back that up, okay. So when I called the Monroe Community College here in New York, and I was on hold waiting to talk to the one of the women higher ups there. I think her name was Miss Sandoval, and Susan Sandoval, and I was waiting for her online. I wanted to ask her why the Department of Homeland Security was stationed on the Monroe Community College campus. That's where it should be. I thought it was down at the federal building or something. It's sitting right there on the college campus. It was kind of odd, so I wanted to get her comment on that. While I was on hold, the recording, usually they play some music or something. They were playing a promotional recording for Monroe Community College's Department of Homeland Security program. And it said the following. It said, a couple years ago, Monroe Community College's Department of Homeland Security program supplies undergraduate students to 265 government agencies and 325 corporations. That's like almost, 600, 700, major, we're talking, all the letter agencies, the government agencies. Who do you think, which government agencies do y'all think are hiring Department of Homeland Gestapo graduates from SBC College? CIA, NSA, DOD, Army Security Agency, National Security Agency, Interpol. It just goes on and on and on. All these state police security agencies, the intelligence units, and all the major police departments. If they're doing physical stuff, maybe they go into a military SWAT unit or something, but mostly controlling the internet, propping up the system, countering people like us, defending Monsanto, defending the corporate police state, speaking up for the cops. No, we know cops are all right, man. They're just taking orders. No, they're drinking. Those are your trolls. What are you doing over Daniel? Daniel, step down. We don't want to hear about GMO food or geoengineering. Daniel wasn't even getting into geoengineering. GMO food's like, activism 101. That's the easy one. The tumors are all out there. The GMO food's very real. It's all been in plain sight. It's bad for people. It's out of God's creation. Radically displacing different species together. That can't be done without some serious consequences. So anyway, once I heard, especially Daniel, that you would tell me it was kind of a GMO related thing, I knew right then and there that any of these complainers, almost all of them, a very few small amount might have a legitimate complaint, and they'll usually be more friendly about it. But the ones who are vociferously complaining and really making a mistake, that somebody's asking you to step down from an organization that you started, and that the website is yours and you run in your group, please. So that is absolutely troll. That is absolutely one of the Department of Homeland Security graduates from MCC, applying under graduates to 265 corporations, government agencies, and 325 corporations. What's 325 and 265? Like 600 something, right? 690, yeah, almost 600. Think about that. Okay, now multiply that times years. Now this is like 4 years ago. Okay, 5 years ago. Now imagine how much bigger that's all become since then. It's growing exponentially, so it's just ungodly the amount of. So don't believe all these. Don't believe. I would say about 5% of the people who are propping up the system and defending the GMO food and defending the police, all that. About 95% of them are paid shills or people who work, as family members related. Most of them are out of these Department of Homeland Security programs. What do you think they're doing? It's obvious. And then, of course, you get ads for crisis actors on the internet. and you get the Army ad for re-education specialist and all the things. It's all up there on the internet. We don't have to go there because some other outfits have already covered that. But, there's plenty of work out there for people who want to prop up the system and work for the enemy. Work for the Antichrist system is a very general term. Once again, the state police, the bar that's given sovereign immunity. Masons are the times. That's basically your organization that keeps everything together. One Mason won't prosecute another. They're greedy. And if you leave, there's some serious consequences. That's why you don't get too many defectors. And there are several in this county that I'm aware of, just in our immediate, kind of group of people. So I think there's a real battle going on here, between good and evil, and good people and evil people. I just can't see anybody making the case that it's a necessary thing for public safety to set up a roadblock on a Sunday morning in a small country, rural Western New York community, asking everybody for their papers, pulling old ladies out of their car and locking them in the back of the trooper car while they ransack, and not even going so far as, what are you doing with that stake in the back of your car? Your hunting tag's not sticking on the stake, so I guess we're going to steal that too. But they didn't. He didn't let them get away with it, but that's what they're trying to do. They want to say, how is that? Food is now illegal. Lawfully obtained food. You got a hunting license. You didn't have it attached to the piece of meat that was already cut off the deer, wrapped up, ready to roast. Just bringing it to church. I don't mean to laugh. It's disgusting. And prison is the best case for these people. There needs to be some hangings for treason. That's the penalty. I'm not making it up. I'm not vicious. I don't want to hurt anybody. I certainly don't want to kill anybody. But there are people who are definitely worthy of, I think, the penalty of treason, and we know what it is. So, Dave, I'll turn it back over to you.
Sorry about that. Closing the door on my tool cabinet. But, part of this problem is, it's like it just heinous. About a year ago, I was told by my local county that I live out in the middle of freaking nowhere. I am 7 miles from a town of about 150 people, okay? And I've got, little neighbors, okay? I'm middle of nowhere, okay? I really am. I'm rural, okay? Now, we don't have huge lots out here, but, we all have, 5 to some guys are, up to 100 acres out here. But, I was told a couple of years ago, I was planting my garden. I was told, you can't plant a garden without prior authorization from the building department. I was told I couldn't plant a garden, so I asked the lady, what authority do you have? Oh, I'm an assessor with the county, and you have to get permission because a garden could potentially increase the value of your property. So, I told her the same thing all my neighbors did. They tried to pass a law here that you could not have a garden without a permit from the county, and they could wake you up at 2 in the morning. They said 24 hours a day you had to be available to show your permit to a law enforcement officer. And that law enforcement officer could come over any barrier or break any barrier to inspect the garden. Okay, they tried to pass this. And, the only way we're going to win is by educating people. I talked to 10 of my neighbors who are anti-gun, all moved over from California. I talked to them, hey, I grew up in California. How are you doing? Oh, yeah, well, I'm happy to be out of there because, I saw a lot of bad stuff over there. There's no way to defend yourself. It's the conversation started on the defense aspect. They're able to chime in. All those neighbors thought that you had to go through some extensive process to own a gun because we're all used to that in California where you have to get a permit to own a handgun even if you legally and lawfully bought it. And now they're compensating all the registered weapons over there, but that's another topic. But what I did was I talked to some of my neighbors. Every single one of them went out and started building their own guns. And then I got one of our neighbors who's a former Class 7 SOT, I believe, which means he built all the grenade launchers, belt-fed machine guns, all that stuff for the military and stuff. And I got him to teach a class on building firearms. We got a whole bunch of people together, built a whole bunch of guns, and, you know, some of those neighbors and I have never talked since then. It doesn't matter. But, you know, all my neighbors told the sheriff's deputies the same thing, because they were giving us notice that if this law passed, we were going to have to get freaking a permit. Even if you grew a lawn, they wanted you to get a permit. Okay, under the guise of increasing your property value. Okay? The only way you can defy it is say, no, if you come on my property, I'm going to freaking shoot you. Now, you've got to be point blank with these guys, because I'll tell you what, those deputies do not have balls. They only have balls when they're backed up by 100 of their guys, and when they get a whole area telling them go to help, I mean, they were out here pouring cement down people's wells because they were putting in city water saying, oh, you don't have a right to have a well anymore. We're going to pour cement down your well so you can't have water unless we deem it okay.
You know, that's a crime against humanity. That's the urban president that you deprive any people or individual of water, shelter, food, medical care. That's a crime against humanity. That's punishable by death. That's a capital offense. That means it's punishable by death. I mean, these guys are really stupid because they're going to a place that they're very pointed.
I talked to the deputy, said, this man put me in handcuffs. I was laughing at him. You are dumb shit. I know all my neighbors told me the same thing I did. We told them, point blank, if we saw them backing a cement truck up to any of our neighbors' houses, if anything happened, we're going to execute all of them, period, right there on the spot, because we're not going to have it done anymore. We had a little old lady, they wanted to charge her $5,000. They put the line in front of her house, wasn't more than 20 feet for the water line. They wanted to charge her $5,000, then charge her a monthly fee for the amount of water she used, okay? They wanted to put a wireless smart meter, which is a whole other ball of cats right there. And, okay, I mean, it was just heinous. They poured her, that 70-year-old woman. Thank God, and I don't mean this to sound mean or anything, but she was a good friend of mine. I helped her out. I trimmed some reprieve and stuff. Thank God she passed away, because she would be rolling over in her grave. The day after she died, they brought up, without a freaking court order or anything, they brought up, this is right before we all decided where our line in the sand was, they brought up a freaking cement truck, okay, and poured cement down her well, okay, and they put a sign up that said anyone trying to access this well is guilty of XYZ statutes and all this crap, okay? Then, this is the other thing they've been doing. Now, for people who are not aware, Nevada is the driest state in the union. We get 6 inches of rainfall and precipitation a year. That may sound like a lot to you, but trust me, it is not. Okay? That means that if you were doing rainwater collection or anything like that, if you are collecting water in any way like that, it means you have to be very conservative with your water usage. Or you can't running out of water in the middle of summer, which is not a good place to be. Especially when temperatures get over 100 degrees and you got very dry air. Anyone who's fought in the Middle East will know exactly what I'm talking about when I say people die in those kind of conditions without water very quickly. They say you got 3 days. If you're in the sun, you got about 6 to 8 hours maximum. I've been out here where it is so hot, I had a pair of Wolverine boots on, and they actually started getting sticky and sticking to the freaking blacktop. That's how hot it gets out here, okay? You have no idea how important water is until I had my damn well pump go out on me a couple years ago, okay? You have no idea what it's like to go without running water. Most people don't, especially in a dry, arid climate such as mine, for 3 months. It is not fun. It is not easy. And that's why we have to educate people that if you want results, you have to have a community response. If you get 90% of your people on board, you are going to be an unstoppable force. I talked to the leader of the National Guard out here. You know what he told me about our little thing? He said, oh, yeah, we got a call about it. We were asked if we would respond. They were asked if they would respond to a whole bunch of neighbors who said, no, we're not going to allow cement to be put down our well. You know what this National Guard commander told them? He said, I wouldn't touch this from the other side of the world. Because he was smart. You see, if you get a good enough response and enough people, and you draw a line in the sand, and if you cross this, it's on, buddy. And like we were talking about earlier, not very many people have a set of cojones. So you've got to have people that are going to do what has to be done. If you sit there and let them push you around all day long, they're just going to keep pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back until you fall off the cliff and break your freaking back, okay? You can't fight anything. This is why it's so important to have, and I'm not saying violence is the answer, I've never said that. But sometimes the only way to defend yourself is through an act of violence. And people don't understand that is not truly violence for the sake of violence. That is called self-defense, and it's a God-given right. It is not given you by the government. It is God-given. I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but I thought you guys might like to hear this. You know, this kind of charity, I mean, taking people's water away. How about, and we're out in the desert for crying out loud.
Yeah, that's just definitely.
Think about that.
It's definitely not good. It kind of reminds me of what's happening around the country, where they're finding a bunch of these major city water contaminations. I mean, these people are basically at the mercy of the government now, bringing in bottled water, and we find the same thing out here in Minnesota, where the water has been basically poisoned by no other than Monsanto and their spraying of the potatoes, and it's affected the water. The cancer has risen around here. It's pretty sad state of affairs when we're contending with giant corporations and big bad government, you know. But definitely, I think you know, education is the key to liberation, and I tend to agree with the self-defense, what you're talking about. Definitely, I think that's, you know.
Well, you know, my argument is you know, how are we supposed to? That at the time that they poured in that woman's well, it was going to cost at least $5,000, which was about what the whole property was worth. Okay. It was going to cost as much as the property was worth just to get the water hooked up, not including $250 a month for what they call, they act like it's called limited usage up to it and including X amount of gallons. So they charge you like a flat rate unless you go over those gallons, and then you get charged like $2 a gallon or some ridiculous amount.
Right.
And you know, my question is how both morally and ethically mandated for you to resist your aggressor at that point, who is trying to take away your source of life, i.e. water. Without water, we die. Without food, we die. Without air, we die. These are three things you cannot take away from people. Period.
Right, yeah. Yeah, definitely have to agree. Are you still there? Hello? Eric is there. It looks like our other caller has dropped. Mr. Dave has dropped off.
Dave dropped?
Yeah. All of a sudden he went silent. But
He might have been battery issues.
Yeah. Oh, he's back. Hold on. Let me get him back here. Welcome back.
I'm sorry about that.
That's all right.
Probably the NSA. But what I was trying to say is that before I was so rudely interrupted by whatever agency you want to blame for that, because I have 5 bars right now. But anyhow, what I was trying to say is it not. I would say that it's not only morally and ethical to do so. I would say that it's mandated that those of us who can resist tyranny to resist tyranny in every way, shape, or form we can. But that does not mean that we resort to violence and or self-defense immediately. It means that we pick and choose our battles. We are strategic and we think the long game. The people who think short game lose. They always lose. They never win. They may win 1 or 2 battles, or they may win 10 battles in a row. But they always lose the war. And that's why we have to educate people to start thinking, I'm thinking 50 years ahead. You know, what happens when this little town doesn't exist anymore near me? I need my well.
Right, yeah.
So, you know, it's one of these things, and on top of that, without my will, how am I supposed to help? I've had people that are so lost, they're out near my house. I had a guy in a Mercedes Benz. I've had this happen quite a few times, and it's always a Mercedes it takes. And the guy breaks down. His AC is just cracked out on him, brand new car, you know, just too hot out here for any vehicle to handle. And the guy breaks down, and you can tell the guy's overheating. He's got sweat stains on his freaking tailored shirt or something, you know. Like, hey, how would you like some nice cold water and a glass of Gatorade or something, man? And I'll tell you what, every time those people who normally get lost out here are liberals who are from Northern California or thereabouts who are going down to Vegas, but they like coming through Nevada because we've got higher speed limits and you can get down there faster, okay? And even if you take the long way around through Nevada. And, you know, every time I meet one of those guys, I'll tell you what, they are thankful that I had a well, because it cost me pennies to give them that water. I mean, if it was $5 for me to give them that water, I may not be able to afford to in the future. That's what people don't realize. You know, there's a song by the Kingston Trio called Desert Pete. And to really understand how essential water is, I think you should listen to that. I believe it's the Kingston Trio, either the Kingston Trio or Marty Robbins, one of those two. But it's so sad that people don't realize how important the necessities are.
Do you know what the name of the song is?
I believe it was Desert Pete by the Kingston Trio.
Desert Pete by the Kingston Trio. Let me see if I can pull that up here.
And it's one of those songs, it's an old American folk song, you know. Talking about being out in the desert and having the chapped lips and the thirst that can't seem to be quenched. And this guy named Desert Pete had a pump out in the middle of nowhere with some water to prime the leather. That's how a lot of those old pumps used to work, is you prime the leather pump, or the leather seal, I should say, to prime the pump so you could start pumping water. And there are songs about that, but you listeners, I believe it's, I can check real quick, give me a second.
I'm pulling it up right now. Let's see if we could play that actually on our YouTube.
When you people get discouraged out there, there is nothing in this world that talent will. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent.
Amazing.
Great quote.
Oh, all right. Let me see. I'm trying to pull this up here. The Kingston Trio one.
I don't know if I ever got to the quote of the judge in the Stephen Dean case. I think I didn't get to what he said at the Stephen Dean release hearing. I got off explaining what happened to Stephen Dean with this FBI setting him up. Oh, by the way, before I tell you what the judge said at the release hearing about how the voice does make a difference, the FBI in the Stephen Dean case in Utah, where they lured him to a shooting range, handed him a gun so he'd take a few shots, and arrested him for possession of a firearm by a convicted felon because he had a statutory offense in his past from years ago, just like Shane Bennett's stupid nonviolent thing. And so it says in the same statute that they charged him with 18 U.S.C. 922 G1 or something, I think, like that, and then said G1 said possession of possess a firearm by a convicted felon is a felony. Okay, and just by holding that gun that they gave him for not even a couple of minutes, that was it. That was their charging him with possession. How absurd is that?
Yeah, it's entrapment. It's entrapment.
Yeah, and it says right down in it
90 seconds.
G2, G3, like G8 says anyone who places the gun in the hand of a convicted felon is also committing a felony.
Of course.
So the FBI committed, well, not only the entrapment, but also it says right in the same statute they charged him with, the idiot committed a felony by doing it. They handed him the gun. The felony, their felony act preceded his.
Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice?
Seconds.
And so he signed the deal. To get out. I don't begrudge him that. It's under duress. Sign what you got to sign to get out of jail. Being on the inside is not going to do you any good. Okay, so he gets out, and at the release hearing, the judge says, Judge Benson says something to the effect of, I've got 24 phone calls in the last 24 hours on this case. And this is 82 days after his arrest. There was still, Daniel remembers, Daniel and I were the one that put this whole thing together, sitting at the pizza shop that had Wi-Fi, posted Steven's picture, and getting this thing all out over all the websites where we could, sending out text to everybody we know and asking them to repost, and it got really big. It got traction to the point where there were still 25 calls a day coming into the judge's chambers.
10 seconds.
4th District, Salt Lake.
Beautiful.
So now Judge Benson should have let Steve out earlier, but to his credit, and I spoke to him on the phone right before he even knew Stephen Dean was on his docket. We called when Stephen Dean got arrested Friday. He got taken 60 miles from his house, from his tribal land. He was Native American. They took him from way up in Millard to down to Salt Lake, Utah, where you'd be population, the worst jail, the big city, on Friday afternoon and said, what if the general said to the jailer, the marshal told the jailer, what if the general population, don't let them have any visitors? What does that tell you? Okay, nothing good's going to happen to him in there. So by Saturday, we had so many calls within 24 hours, by Saturday afternoon, they had the federal building on lockdown, the federal courthouse on lockdown, the county jail on lockdown, and Stephen Dean in a protective cell. And we're starting to threaten him. If phone calls don't stop coming in, it's going to get really hard for you. So they were really squirming there. They were denying people into the jail because it was on lockdown. So all the people who were coming to visit other people in the jail were freaking out. They weren't even related to the Stephen Dean case. The whole thing became a giant. They must have thought the militia was coming over the hill with tanks or something because they were freaking. The marshal changed their phone number by Tuesday to a fax number, and it was an epic phone blitz. And the judge said, he said, I got 25 calls from the last day on this. He said, I don't see any Al-Qaeda here. He said, all I see is people who care about Stephen Dean. And that was cool because that basically acknowledged the fact that we were not threatening, we're not part of any, everybody was pretty professional. He could have said, that judge could have done anything. He could have made it up. He could have lied. He could have done anything. He could have said, these crazy right-wing people calling me every day at my chambers, bothering me, this is absurd. You really do associate with some, he didn't get into that. He was very, all I see is people here who care about Stephen Dean. I don't see any Al-Qaeda here. And that was good because that basically kind of released Stephen from the accusation by the government that because of his political beliefs, he should be held without bail for 82 days, which he should have been out much earlier than that, but, at least he's out now.
Right.
And they denied bail. No bail. I mean, you're kidding me? Hitmen get bail. I mean, it's $500,000. People who are accused of murder get bail, $1 million. Sure, but at least they get bail. It says in almost every state constitution, I believe Utah as well, the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended at all offenses shall be bailable. With the vigilante except for capital offenses. And he wasn't accused of any capital offense. He certainly wasn't accused of doing anything except holding a gun that somebody handed him and committed a felony doing it. So he should have been bailed. He should have got some kind of bail. And they denied him any bail. Zero. None. They held him for 82 days.
Beautiful.
That was not cool. So anyway, that was the Stephen Dean case. And the long and short moral to that whole story, not the story that actually happened, that event is that was the first Court of Observers big phone blitz, and that's kind of where we, started developing the pressure that we did on the corrupt court. They finally let him out, and, long and short is your voice does matter. People, it absolutely does.
Yes.
You have to call just, and listen, call a couple of times. Require them to do something. Send me an email, please, of the grand jury indictment.
Hey, Eric.
Send me an email of the...
I hate to interrupt.
I was just going to say, have people make a requirement or a request when you call in on a phone blitz. So it's not just, hey, I support... If it is just, hey, I support Shane Bennett, great. But if you could say, please, I'm waiting for your email of the sworn affidavit from the arresting officer, that helps. That makes them respond and do something. And it makes it very uncomfortable for them that they have to perform a public service, and they'll usually back off from the tyranny somewhat in the future.
Right.
So there is success there. We do appreciate all the people who get involved and make their voice known. And God is watching. Your voice counts. The man upstairs sees it when you step up and take a risk and call. And it's really not much risk. Because, by the way, the wolves and the government and the scumbags and the sharks, they go after the easy prey and the easy marks first. They're going to go after the people who really fight hard last. Trust me, because they're ultimately bullies are cowards, and the government is just nothing but bullies top to bottom. So what do you do to the bully? You got to stand up to them, right, Dave? Don't let them push you around. You're going to just have a miserable life.
Right. The Bible does say if you stand up against the devil, he'll flee. So, I mean, that's definitely, I would have to say, a spiritual thing to do. But, guys, we're coming down to the program's over. But if you have a few last words you want to say, Dave, and then I'll play our closing music here.
Yeah, I will just say this. If you bow down, you will always be a slave. If you live on your feet, you will live free. If you live on your knees, you are not free.
Absolutely. And just want to thank everybody tonight who's listening to studio1776.org, YouTube, and Blog Talk Radio. If you like what we're doing and appreciate the information that we have here, we definitely encourage you guys to join the program, subscribe to our YouTube, subscribe to our Blog Talk Radio, and also subscribe to our website and Facebook group and Twitter as well. And pass this information along. And if you know somebody that would enjoy the program, or you think that you know somebody that needs to be, how would I say, woken up to the tyranny, and that's definitely what we're here to do. We're here to plant seeds and water the minds of men and carry that torch. Well, until next time, guys, I want to say God bless and have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you on the flip side.
Thank you, Daniel. What's happening back in my head?
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Oh, all right. I don't know if I'm going to go to sleep, but.
Why?
Say, catch that train tonight.
Ew.
Yeah, tonight's Monday,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, tonight I got to catch that train.
Perfect. You can.
Yeah.
You better have your sleep till 1:30 is 2 o'clock.
Well, probably 1 o'clock. Because I gotta get on that train.
Yeah.
I don't want to be late like the last couple times.
What time does that come in?
About 2. I think it leaves at 2:18.
Oh, it's about 1 o'clock then.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm trying to look at my calendar here. Yeah, 29th. That's right now. So,
I'll let you go to tomorrow night.
what's that?
I bet you're going tomorrow night.
No, I decided to leave tonight. I gotta get back. I got some stuff I gotta do around town. I got laundry to do.
Mm.
And then I gotta go and deal with the plates on that car. So, yeah, just want to make sure I get back in time so I don't miss my court date. Well, not my court date, but miss my going back to work. So, yeah, then.
Well, you have a safe trip. Love you.
Thanks, Grandma. I love you too. Definitely. Remember, use that kale and make that drink for Grandpa.
I'll make that drink for you.
Yeah, he likes it, so you might as well give it to him.
If I don't get something, I left a note there. Lady's keys.
Oh,
Or
leaves.
he said tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Over there.